Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Welcome to our July 1st, 2023 library update. We're going to talk about all of the games that came into the library, all of our upgrades, as well as pre-orders just in general. As a special video, because we're going to actually be talking about the last 2 months of games that's entered, as well as upgrades and all of the pre-orders, because I was on vacation during the last one. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please make sure that you do. It is the best way to help us grow. And for those of you already subscribed, thank you so much for the continuous support. Let's talk about all of the games that entered the SideGame Library in June and in May of 2023. Now, starting off with our first section, we're going to talk about all of the new arrivals, and this first one here is Atlantis Rising Monstrosities. This is an expansion that adds new scenarios that are all based on creatures and monsters, as well as new characters, as well as allies that you can recruit to help you out along your journey. Now, the point of this game is to escape Atlantis before it completely submerges, but the new scenarios add additional challenges that are going to stop you, particularly during the early parts of the game. I've just played the first challenge so far, the Medusa, as she freezes your different characters, but you'll also be able to get new allies, as well as use abilities that introduce new different mechanisms, like these magic items, including a mirror that actually is used to turn Medusa from a creature into an ally. The game is much more difficult, particularly at lower player counts, because the way that you actually get these new characters has you paying different resources to recruit allies, and that is super punishing if you get them early in the game, because otherwise they may have you skip in essentially a whole turn without skipping any of the hazards, and that could be pretty crushing. So that's just in the Medusa Unleashed scenario so far, and that's just my overall impressions playing at the 1, 2, and 3 player count. But so far I am looking forward to trying this more, because I do appreciate the added difficulty of the scenario, so maybe that means I'm going to have to dial back the difficulty of the standard like components that you build, stuff like that. I am enjoying this one. I love the new characters, the new misfortune cards, the way that you customize it, as well as all of the additional extras that are added, whether it be the hologram deck and just the extra tiles for the different characters in general. So looking forward to playing more of this and trying out the new AI mode as well. So that is Atlantis Rising Monstrosities. Next up is Asteroid Dice. I covered this one in a whole review, so you can go ahead and check that video out. But it's a quick dodgeball style game where you're throwing these large dodgeball dice based on this simultaneous reveal system. I like the entire structure of this game, how it's easy to jump in. There's no shuffling or any maintenance that you have to actually do, and you get going and playing. I love that, and the prediction aspect, and you're having to constantly check what's happening. I do recommend this game at higher player counts, at least 4 players. 5 is definitely the best player count for this, because that just will ensure that you're going to have more challenges. In lower player count games, you may only have a single dodgeball throw challenge, just because people are picking the non-matching symbols. That's something to be aware of, but a game I do enjoy. This is Asteroid Dice. Next, we have Yinsh. So this was the first in the gift series that I've given a try, and I enjoy this a lot. It's a abstract game where you are trying to do a Connect 5 system using these different tiles, but it's a mixture of Connect 4 with Othello, as you're going to be moving these large discs around the board here, and every time you move them, you flip any discs that you that you pass over. So you're constantly flipping the colors, making those sets of 5. So there's a lot of things to think about, but the discs also serve as blockers, as no other characters can end their movement there. So it's a cool game that scales based on how well the different players are doing, because if you do succeed in getting that 5 in a row, you remove one of your discs from the board, and you'll put it in this little score area. If you get 3, you win the game, but you're getting weaker and your options are decreasing, the better you're doing. I like this system, and the catch-up mechanism is elegant, it makes sense, and it's a beauty. This is one that I want to get a neoprene playmat for, because I think everything else in component-wise is top-notch. So that is Yinsh. That is our next game here. Next up, we have Camel Up, the card game. A little disappointed with this one, as I was expecting just a pocket Camel Up version. Camel Up, one of my favorite games, period, in the horse betting, in this case camel racing, camel betting genre. This one gives you a lot of control of the camels, but also adds a lot of fiddly rules, makes it so it's a harder game to explain, and cuts a lot of the magic out with the unpredictability of the camel. Still uses the camel stacking mechanism, which I do appreciate, and you can still get crazy things happening based on the players, so I do like that it has a huge aspect of that player-driven nature, but the action system is a little bit more convoluted, less streamlined, and so it's not going to be my preferred one that I pull out. I think it's in the library right now just because it does fit in that small box, but the table space is actually greater than the original Camel Up, which I think is crazy. So I don't know how often I'm going to play this one, or if it'll even stay in the library, but because I do enjoy the original so much better. But I think that with that player choice, that this is one that we could revisit, and I think it'll be some people's preferred go-to version of Camel Up because of that agency of all of the players, and they're doing the main controlling of what's actually happening in the race. But I do think think that Longshot the Dice game does this a bit better in that player-controlled aspect with the different small actions and being able to influence everybody, marking on the different cards. So that would be my recommendation over Camel Up the card game as well, and that's Longshot the Dice game. So that's Camel Up the card game. Next up is another dodgeball game. This is Throw Burrito, and this is actually another copy of this. So we got a Kickstarter edition, which is pretty cool, has alternate art cards, and I got it for a steal at an auction. So it just had brand new art as well as 2 extra burritos. And that was the big thing that I wanted, was just more burritos, because we played this a lot and the burritos are getting damaged. So we needed some more burritos to replace it. That being said, we also got a new expansion to Throw Burrito, and this is Throw Tortilla. And it's exactly what you would think. Throw Tortilla has these large tortilla shields that you get to use in addition to the burritos. And this expansion is actually insanely good. And so the way it works is you put the tortillas on top of the burritos, so they're blocking the access to the burritos, and they've replaced all of the dodgeball challenge cards with ones that use the tortillas. And the tortillas are shields. You cannot use them to throw at people, which I think is cool. It's purely defensive, but some brawls give you a win if you're able to block one successfully, so it gives you an incentive to do a defensive maneuver. And then some of them, one of my favorite ones, just like the standard brawl, is whoever plays it grabs the tortillas and throws them. So the other players to their sides have to go and get those tortillas as well as grabbing the burrito, and then it's like a gladiator fight where they have a shield and they have a burrito, but they have to have the tortilla before they can throw the burrito. This makes for some awesome moments where you throw them across the room and they're chasing and they're trying to reposition, getting their tortilla, and it's a straight up goofy looking gladiator fight. So much fun. I love the dynamic that this adds. That is Block Burrito, an excellent expansion to an excellent dodgeball game. Next up, we have Oriflamme Alliances. This is another in the Oriflamme series where you're going to be playing cards in this line, and every turn you're adding new cards and potentially flipping your cards. Otherwise, they accrue victory points on top of them. Now, the old one, you generally pretty much wanted to always flip your cards to gain their abilities. There were only a couple cards that cared whether or not they were face down or not, or they were accruing points. But this one has a great split of several cards that you want to keep face down, but other cards that you'll want to flip up, and they flip back face down, and there are reasons to get several instances of points. It also has these cards that will stay in front of you that give you player abilities if you're able to activate them, and you push your luck on how long you're waiting to activate them. I think this is the best in the series for sure. I like the theming, the artwork, as well as just the integrated mechanisms that actually use the pre-existing system of collecting different victory points on cards. So this is the best one. This is Oriflamme Alliances. Next up is Hail Hydra. This is sort of a small version of something like Battlestar Galactica, where it's a cooperative game, but there are hidden traitors that are trying to sabotage it for everybody else. And they're doing this through a card system where everybody's contributing cards for a mission, but the bad players can put in negative ones. But sometimes the good players might be forced to put in these negative cards. So it's a small game, simple framework, has several rounds of voting where you can potentially suss out who is evil, and then it has a reveal system where you can, in the middle of a mission, claim Hail Hydra if you are on the bad team to get an additional bonus effect. Each character also has an ability that will somehow change the game, and I love that the evil characters have strategies that they can use and employ to use their seemingly good power to affect the game negatively. I love that. Like Black Panther has this effect where he can double the number that the players play, but if the evil team is putting in a bunch of bad cards, then they can double it at a strategically terrible time to make it so that the number is so low so that the good team takes a bunch of damage. I like that there are positives and negatives for each ability, and so determining when you want to use them is critical. And you can totally play it off based on the players that are playing that you were in earnest trying to use them for good. So I like the theming on this. The artwork is a great core system. That is Hail Hydra. Next is the expansion for Arkham Horror, the card game. This is Fortune and Folly. This is a heist scenario, so very much Ocean's 11. I love this. You start off the game by going into the casino and you have the option to case it. So you can go around, look at what's happening, try to put in different things that'll help you out in future scenarios, like maybe stowing some gear, trying to figure out what's going on, stealing some uniforms, stuff like that. And then in the next scenario, you actually run the heist and you're trying to steal this artifact, and it's a good time. I like that the encounter cards also have, as you can see here, the different card symbols. So when you're playing casino games, you're caring about what different cards have what different symbols, and as you play, you're going to add more cards into the encounter deck, which will decrease your odds because now you have more cards that you have to contend with. It's a great system, and I think that this one is full of theme. It's one of the best side scenarios that Arkham Horror has put out in a while. So that is Arkham Horror, the card game, Fortune Fortune, and Folly. Next is Aeon Trespass Odyssey. We got our copy that is undamaged into the library, so I was able to get a lot of games played of this. So I've been playing this for about a week and a half to make sure that I knew what I was doing when I did the organizing video. And I'm having a lot of fun with it. I think that the flow is making more sense. There's a bunch of great aids that you can use to actually get you into the action and get the game making more sense. I think the tutorial is excellent and getting you up and running. And then the story is a lot of fun as you're exploring and figuring out what's going on in this Grecian setting. So the monster combat is a lot of fun. I love the way that the monsters scale. Every time that you deal it damage, it gets stronger, but every time you attack, you get stronger. So every single side is amping up their aggression, their attack, and their abilities as you go. There's ways that you can tempt fate, and one of my favorite things is the disorder system, where you can get these awful things that happen to you from playing with fate too much, but you get a storyline that you travel that down, and that is going to allow you to actually get rid of that disorder. So there are reasons to continue using a character that has some awful flaw because you can get stronger because of it. I like the storytelling of this, and I'm looking forward to playing more. That is Aeon Trespass Odyssey. Next up, we have Forks. This is a small filler game that is brilliant. It's a stock game where it uses a biblio-style system where every round you're drawing a hand of cards, you're keeping one, and then giving the rest to another person to give an option to. So it's a bit of a draft, but also every single time that you're taking a card, you're losing the potential to influence what's happening in the middle here. So at the end of the game, you're going to get points based on the cards you have, and those cards are going to have numbers, and they're positive if the stocks of that color in the middle have the biggest numbers. So for example, right here, purple, red, and yellow, their numbers are the most in the middle there in the stocks. So if you had any of those cards in your hand, then you would score those positively. But if you had any green or gray, those would be negative points. Now, you're never the person that's choosing after you take a card what is going in the center, because the way the turn structure works is you draw 3, you keep 1, embezzle it for scoring at the end, then you pass the other 2 to the person on your left. They embezzle 1, and then they put the 1 in the center. Every single decision here feels painful, because if you're taking a card to score based on the middle, you're going to be decreasing the value because that card is not going to be in the middle to increase that value. It gives me a lot of vibes of Capital X 2 Generations, which is one of my favorite games, period. But it also does it in a quick way that everyone can start playing immediately. It's got super low play time, about 10 minutes to get a game in, has player powers, abilities, and then we also got the expansion that adds a scenario that has a bit of a legacy feel to it, which is wild to me that all this is in that small package. That's Forks, a strong recommendation from me. Next up, we have Chromamix. This was a game that we were sent as well, did a review on the channel here, and it's a engine building game that is similar to something like, I would say Splendor is something that comes to my head, where you are going to be spending turns to either gain cards into your hand, play those cards, or recall those cards. And so you're mixing colors in order to get new cards with new abilities, and the abilities get better and better the more colors that you mix together. There's multiple win conditions for this one, which I think is one of my favorite parts, that you have different paths to go, and they're all valid. The different card abilities are also fun when you get into those stronger levels. Now, one of my biggest criticisms with the game was that the iconography was pretty poor, so that they had icons that just didn't make sense, weren't recurred, the player reference aids didn't cover all of the cards, but they've actually done a big thing recently where they've gone and changed the cards dramatically, which I think is awesome. So they went in and they added explanation text on every single card so you can understand what the symbols mean, so you're not having to reference in the rules, but they've still kept flavor text, symbology to help you with retaining those rules. I love this. It makes so much sense, and they've also done a cool effect here on the left side with colorblind friendliness, where they've put these slashes on the cards to show that you don't need that specific color, just in case there was any misinterpretation. So I love that they took some of the criticisms that we put in our review video. You can go check that out on my channel, but they've made a change immediately during the campaign because this was on GameFound when I put out that review. So that is Chromamix. Next up is Stranger Things, The Upside Down, and this one's really sad for me because I love the theme. The production is incredible. The artwork is awesome, and it's a game that's set in the first season of Stranger Things and the second season of Stranger Things. And so your objectives and your abilities and your allies and the events all reflect thematically amazing things that are happening in those episodes. It's perfect, the thematics. However, the gameplay is extremely lacking. It has a core mechanism that is incredible, and I want to see it in more games. It's a push your luck, challenge system where you have these stacks of discs and you're trying to play cards in order to meet a certain value. And once you do that, you're able to clear those discs out and gain a bonus. But if you fail, you remove the discs and shuffle them up. And then hopefully your next time you have a little bit more knowledge on what you're going to be facing. So I love that system with the action cards and the discs, but the game itself is not great. It's pretty dang formulaic and not that exciting. So the biggest thing that you do in this game is you try to save Will. In the first 2 episodes, that's pretty much all you do, because one time he's been captured into the Upside Down, and the second time he is possessed by a demon. So pretty much the whole game is you gain items to improve your game save Will status. You go to this area that allows you to play cards stronger, which is like these little crisis symbols. So if you do that like 3 times, you can basically play all the cards in your hand without worrying about anything. And then you go to the save Will spot and you just do that 6 times in the second season, or like 3 times in the first season. And that's kind of it. There's nothing really else you're doing that's exciting. The game is repetitive. The items all do exactly the same thing. The allies have effects that you're going to look at and be like, okay, this is one that obviously we need to get. This protects fears, which means now I ignore all the bad things that happen. And the gameplay when we played this was you move, get your items. You go and do the emergency things, and then you go and save Will. And you just do that for however long it takes. And then if something comes up that says you got to do this first, you do that thing, and then you go back and save Will. Not super exciting. Choices aren't really there, and it's a game that I don't think I ever need or really want to play again. It's got a cool mechanism, but it's trapped in a game that just isn't exciting. Also, one of the goofiest things they've done here is they've made 11 herself a actual round tracker, but they have remedied this by making it so you can print out a character for her. So they've actually stickered it on the box. It's a QR code you'll follow, and you can print out in 11's player sheet. It makes the game a little bit more challenging because you can no longer access the 11 abilities. But I'll be honest with you, we didn't really use the 11 abilities in the original game either, because we were just sitting there and doing the save Will action with our characters anyway. So I don't know if it's actually going to even increase the difficulty, because it's not something you're even going to really need to interact with. So unfortunate, but this one's actually already back to go. This is Stranger Things Upside Down. Next up, we have Ghosts of Christmas, and this is another unfortunate one, just like Stranger Things Upside Down, where it entered the library, played it a bunch, and now it's already gone. I've already sold this one, actually. Ghosts of Christmas is a trick-taking game where you are playing several tricks at the same time. So 3 in the base, but you can play with a Beyond expansion that adds a 4th, and every turn you look at your hand of giant cards. Every round you look at your hand of cards and predict over the entire hand of cards how many you think you can win. There's some flexibility in the scoring, but you're going to have to give up the amount of points that you can get to gain that flexibility, and then once you actually hit the round, you are playing on your turn into one of the trick lanes, essentially. So you can play in past, present, future, or beyond, and then you're either leading in that area or you're following a existing card somebody else has played. So you're trying to strategically look at your hand and figure out what you can do, but also play an appropriate time so that you can either lead or follow based on what you're trying to achieve. And this one just is pretty generic to me. I didn't find anything exciting or interesting about it. There's no special abilities or effects, just this core system that I think is interesting but doesn't have a lot of variance to it. A lot of the times you'll look at your hand, understand what you need to do, and it's a little bit limiting as well, because a lot of the times you are looking at your hand, you have a weak set of cards and you can't really do much with it. There's a max, like a hard max on the points that you can earn, which is pretty frustrating because there's no shooting the moon in this one. You can't bid 0 and then get rewarded for that, which I thought was a little frustrating. And every time I was playing, I just thought, wow, why am I not playing any other trick-taking game for Northwood, or in the multiplayer setting, why am I not playing Skull-King instead of this? Yeah, just not a lot to bring me back to it. Cool system. I'd like to see it somewhere else, but not one that I think needs to stay around. Unfortunately, that is Ghosts of Christmas. Next up is Star Wars Destiny. This game is awesome. So this is a out of print, actually, collectible dice building TCG where you can find so many discounts on it. It's crazy. Like, I think Game Nerds has entire boxes for $50 a piece, which is wild. You can get the starter decks for like $8 or $7, and those decks are pretty dang fun to fight against. But then you've got all this customization as you are taking your characters and fighting against another person with a dice combat system. On your turn, you take a single action. It goes back and forth, so you're always engaged. You're rolling dice, using dice, playing cards from your hand, or playing using the abilities of the cards that you've already played. And then there's this interesting pass system where when you pass, you claim the battlefield, which gives you an additional effect. So there are reasons to be efficient with your actions or reasons to give up actions in order to get that extra bonus effect. And then the characters are thematic and fun. You have different dice combos that you can build. And the starter decks are pretty amazing as they come with several dice, different abilities, and you're able to build a team of Star Wars characters from different timelines. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy this game quite a bit, and I'm having a great time revisiting all of these old sets, getting some old cards, making new decks. And I think my end goal with this project is to build like maybe 8 decks, put them all in one smaller box, and then have it so that people can pull this out and just pick a character from a different Star Wars timeline and have a great time playing with it. So that is Star Wars Destiny. Loving this one. Next is For Northwood. This is the solo trick-taking game that I alluded to earlier. A lot of fun as you are going to be playing to try to recruit as many people as possible to your side. So the way the game works is you pick one of these people you're trying to recruit. You have 4 abilities in front of you, and at the start of each turn, you can use one of these abilities to interact with the trick-taking in that area. Each of the characters has a target number that you're trying to win, all the way from 0 up to 7, and you have 8 cards in your hand, but the enemy always leads. So they're going to, you can use an ability, enemy will play their card, and then you either follow if you have a matching suit, or if you're out of suit, you can play something else. Each of the enemies has a card at the top here that determines what their trump is, but also the reward if you're able to meet their number. And then based on the characters that you're fighting, you can use them in future fights with the other characters. I know it's not a fight, it's like a diplomatic mission. They're not enemies, they're potential allies, but this is what I'm thinking when it's just from explaining this right now. But I love this because you have all these cool effects that take the core trick-taking framework and give you new options, and then based on the order in which you are attempting to help out and recruit the other people, you can use those abilities to help you take down more challenging opponents and enemies. So you can plan out your different strategies, look at your hand and think about what you want to actually interact with. And there are some ways that you can sort of cheat the system as well and give yourself potentially less turns or more turns during a trick to ensure your victory. This game is so cool. And the fact that it's just a small box, you get into it, you play it in less than half an hour, and even has a little campaign book in the back. It's wonderful. You need to give this one a try. This is For Northwood. Next up is Roll Camera, and this is one we pre-ordered a while ago. They had some issues with like production or shipping or something like that, but it finally arrived, and having fun with this in the cooperative setting. Now, this is a filmmaking board game where you are going to be given a script. You're trying to assemble your sets and place dice in order to put everything in the correct area, shoot the scene, and then put them in this large script on the right side. So you're going to have all of your scenes together, tell a story, and you have a limited budget as well as limited amount of time to do so. So you're trying to manage those two things to get your movie made. You either want it to be a perfect movie, get all the way to the top of this track, or make it all the way to the bottom to have a movie that's so bad it's good. I like the choices when it comes to the production meeting in particular. There's an action space where everybody can put in a card and say, this is what I would like to do for our company, and you get some powerful ability, but you also have to keep in mind everybody's cards because everybody wants to contribute, and there's a lot of cool abilities to pick from. So I love that. It adds some variance to the play, and then adds some communication as you're like, ooh, this could be great. Why do you think we should use this? So it gives you a reason to talk to the other players. Now, my strongest recommendation when you play this game is to play with these little production cards. So they're essentially studios from different movie makers. Like we played with the Blunder Bros company, which is supposed to be like a riff on Warner Brothers. But what it did was it made it so that there were always 3 awful things that were happening all the time. And this was so fun. I don't really like the game without these cards because they give you an additional challenge. They make the game more interesting and allow you to have these hoops that you have to jump through with this relatively simple game, which I enjoyed quite a bit. So I thought that playing with the Bumble Bros card made it so that this game was exciting, interesting, had problems that were constantly coming up, and had us as a team creatively trying to solve and tackle these problems. So particularly that one with having the 3 always persistent negative things happening, but you could get rid of them, but a new one would come up right away. I'm looking forward to trying this and seeing what those other production studios have to offer and make me want to play more. I haven't dabbled into the expansions yet, but we do have one that's based on superheroes, one that's like the B-movie expansion, which makes it a little bit more difficult to fulfill different objectives because you need to make sure you have the certain genre in addition to the type of scene like action, comedy, or drama. So looking forward to playing more Roll Camera, and I think that the 3-4 player count has been my favorite so far. So that is Roll Camera. Next up is The Witcher Old World, and this is one of my favorite games to come out this year. It's a exploration game akin to something like Star Wars Outer Rim or Western Legends, where you're exploring a vast continent, but you play as witchers or mages if you're using that expansion. You'd be moving around the map using your action cards, and then based on where you go, you're taking actions at the city, and you can use as many cards as you want to get all of these extra effects, increasing your stats, getting potions, using dice for poker, and gaining cash that you can train even more skills. But the ultimate goal here is to gain trophies, and that's through either fighting the other witchers at the table or by fighting monsters. And when you kill monsters, you're able to upgrade your different abilities, get new effects that will help you out in future fights. So I love this system, and one of the coolest things is definitely the combat, as you're going to be moving around your character to fight and study the different monsters, and then when you do, you'll be assembling your life pool, which is your deck, and that's your health, and then you're using the cards in your hand to create these card combos, and the card combos will allow you to deal damage, gain different defense values, and then do some awesome combo effects. Now, some of my favorite expansions that we've played all but one at this point, but my favorite expansions right now, there is the additional action cards for The Witcher, and I think that's just by far the best one. It just gives you new abilities for your characters, and the characters themselves, the cards actually have effects on them now. So in the base game, it was all just symbols that would give you one of like 3 basic things that you could do: card draw, damage, defense, and then some that would let you recur cards from the discard pile. But that was about it. With the new action cards, though, you're able to have effects that maybe rely on dice rolls, cards that will do interesting things when they're discarded from your deck or from your hand. And so you're always trying to manage what cards you want, and some cards are absolutely worth taking now to get some cool ability. And I love that when you're looking at a card, you're like, ooh, this card does something unique and cool, and that's what I want to build my deck around. The other expansion I think is incredible is the Wild Hunt expansion, the cooperative one here. It allows you to play all at the same time, so there's no downtime in this one, which I think is incredible, as your turns are overlapped into a single action phase, and you're fighting a single member of the Wild Hunt, which is going to give you a unique objective that you have to beat. The weakest expansion I've played so far is the Mages expansion. This gives you new types of characters, which is going to be the Mages, and their whole thing is they use energy, and the energy is going to be a unique resource to them instead of defense, and they use it to power up their spells. Now, unfortunately, they do not have that same treatment that the Witchers got with having unique action cards, so they are restricted to just those core actions that they have, where, yes, they are cool, they can deal damage, they have defense, but they don't have those cool, unique effects that the Witchers do of like having extra things that happen when they're discarded, having unique text blocks, ways to build differently than the standard core, and so it felt a little bit more wanting, especially after I played with those advanced action cards. So a little sad there. But all that being said, I think that there's a stretch goal box that has like these additional monsters that you can fight. They're these big monster cards, and right here, the Monster Trail expansion. This one is the coolest one. It gives you an entire set of monsters, big monster cards, that replace the originals, but I guess you use them in addition. So they are going to give you new thematic attacks that the creatures do to you, which is so cool because now your creatures feel like these unique creatures, and they also give you these weakness tokens where you're going to be going around, picking them up and saying, okay, this is a bonus that I have when I go fight this creature, and it'll be a thematic bonus. And it's so awesome. It gives you more reasons to travel to different spots in the map, gives it more thematic reactions, and it actually allows the enemies to do things after you've attacked them. As you can see, these cards here have either a special ability or a reaction effect. So if you attack a monster, then you look at each card that you damage them. They've got this big stack of cards, and you look at each, and if they hit a reaction, then the monster does something back to you. So you're always risking whether or not you want to deal damage. Maybe you want to just prolong the fight until you see some of these gone, but there's always that threat of something happening, so the reactions are always something you're going to want to prepare for. I love that system. It's so much fun. So I think that's it on The Witcher Old World. It's a lot of fun. I did play this one with 3 and 4 players as well. I think my preferred player count for the multiplayer is probably going to be, I would say 2 is definitely the strongest. There's still quite a bit of downtime in 3 and 4, just because in the multiplayer setting, you have your turn, you just do all of your stuff. And so you do your entire movement phase, everybody's just waiting for you. And then you do a story, the person to your right is going to do that, or you do a fight and the person to your right is doing that, everyone else is just watching. And then you end your turn by buying cards. When that happens, the other person can go. But with 4 players, this game took a long time. It took about 3 hours, 4 hours? I'm going to say 4 hours for a 4-player game. So it took quite a bit of time. But with the cooperative version 2-player or the competitive 2-player, it's so much fun because you're always engaged. Because if the opponent's doing something and you're playing a 2-player competitive game, you do everything else. So you're playing as the monster, you're determining what's going on, and then as soon as they finish, you start going. It's back and forth, back and forth. Love that feeling. And then the cooperative nature. Honestly, I haven't played this one with more than 2 in the cooperative, but I see it being amazing cooperative as well. The solo mode for this also super challenging and super fun. It's one that I strongly recommend. It's brilliant. This game is so much fun. It captures that Witcher world. I have not read the books. I keep that in mind. I have played maybe like 5-6 hours of the video game for Wild Hunt, as well as I have watched the Netflix TV series. So I'm not the biggest when it comes to the entire Witcher universe, but from my perspective, this gives me an awesome feeling of being a character in a fantasy world that is hunting monsters for bounties and planning strategically my deck to make sure that I can do it effectively. A lot of fun. That is The Witcher Old World. And then this is my favorite game that I've played from this year. This is Oranienburger Kanal. Oranienburger Kanal is a Uwe Rosenberg game, 2-player or solo. You take a canal in front of you by placing all of these routes as well as cards in them, and those cards are going to activate multiple times, either by surrounding them or placing bridges on them. It's a small tight worker placement game where you're either gathering cards, gathering resources, building out these canals, gaining bridges, or using the effects of your pre-existing cards. You have a action wheel that's similar to something like Last Road, but much different because you have the ability to force the movement because it doesn't just happen automatically, which I think is cool as you have a bit more control as what's happening with the resources. And then the delayed objective system of the cards that you're picking makes it extremely rewarding and exciting as you're getting these new abilities and cards and picking up effects that you're just trying to make work. And if you can do it effectively, it feels so gratifying. The solo mode is quick, easy to play, but so much fun and challenging as you are doing the best with what you have. And then the competitive mode gives you more options when it comes to the cards, so you can do combos, but you're also looking at what your opponent's doing as the cards that they're taking are a big deal, and the action spaces that you're blocking can throw off your different tempos, and it's so much fun. I love the incentive system of piling up more money on unused action spaces. This is one you got to give a try if you can get a hold of it. This is Oranienburg Kanal, one of the best games out there. Next up is Star Wars Rebellion. I've been having so much fun with this. I got a copy for the library because of how much fun I've been having playing with my friend Dan, and he has been kind enough to teach me the original game over again and teaching me with the Rebellion expansion, and been having so much fun playing as the Empire and the Rebels. Still haven't got a win in with the Rebels. It's so hard, I think, but maybe I just need to change up what I'm doing. I love that there's every bit of this game is thematic, but also super engaging. This is one of those games, just like Destiny, where you're going back and forth. You have a single action that you do on your turn that can have a cascade of different effects, but you're going one thing, back and forth. So you're always engaged despite how long the printed playtime is. The entire game is thematic. This takes the entire first trilogy of Star Wars and puts it into a game where you are living out the experiences as the Rebels of the Empire. You're sending leaders to take out on missions. You're doing these epic battles, and that's one of the coolest things about the expansion that I have been having so much fun with is the thematic nature of the new battle cards. They've replaced the entire combat system in the original with these new combat cards that feel to me something similar to like Ankh, where you have a single card that you get to play each time, and then every single round of battle, and once you've depleted your hand, that's when you get them all back. So every single battle counts, because if you use something in a battle like 8 turns before, you won't get it back until that entire hand is depleted. But the other awesome thing is the units matter so much more on these cards. It gives you a reason to dive into different unit types because you get a bonus if you play with that unit instead of the other. I love that. There's so many different choices that come from the combats now, and it makes every fight matter, which is so cool. It also just adds new unit types, more dice that you're able to throw, unique characters, as well as special abilities that are super thematic, and more missions and just cards in general for the Rebel players, so they're not as predictable, giving them a bit more of flexibility and unpredictability, which I think is super fun. It feels more thematic. I think it's so well done, and I can see this one raising even higher up to that 10 status because of how perfect the mechanisms and the theming are, and this is a brilliant game. I love Star Wars Rebellion. So that is Star Wars Rebellion, as well as the Rise of the Empire expansion. Next up, we have Turing Machine. This is another one that I was a little bit underwhelmed with, as it's a deduction game where you have this cardboard computer in front of you. You're going to be putting all of these little punchboard cards into this matrix that's going to tell you whether or not a certain combination of numbers satisfies the criteria on these different clues. So you have these clues in the center, you have these cards that have this matrix on the back, and you put these cards on top of them in order to see if it's going to give you the correct answer. So every single round, you are creating a set of 3 cards that you'll test on as many machines as you want. And your goal is to try to do this in the least amount of tests possible and in the least amount of turns possible. So I've only played this one, the solo and the cooperative version. This one it's fine. I feel like it is extremely fiddly for what it's trying to do. I feel like I've played apps on my phone that do this in just a much more streamlined fashion, and I feel like I've played board games that are more interesting and less fiddly than this one. Like Planet Unknown would be a great recommendation from me if you like this idea of creating and finding and deducing things. Even if you're looking for a more thematic one, go play Star Wars Rebellion and play as the Empire as you're looking for the Rebel base. That will help you with trying to figure out what's going on, but also give you reasons to interact and move and try to fish for more information. This one is okay. I think that the system is cool. It's so cool how it works because of the unique combinations, but actually playing it is not that exciting for me. You take the cards, you put them on the pattern, you look at it, you're like, cool, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'll write it down on my page. This is going to give me all of these different notes, things to think about. Overall, though, not one I'm super excited to play. I don't know how long this one's going to stay in the library. I want to try this one with some more players potentially, but I don't think that's going to be a big deal because it is pretty much the multiplayer solitaire nature of it, and that race is between the other players. So yeah, you are trying to do things a little bit better, but the interaction and the excitement is just not there, and it's not enough to push me past that fiddliness. So that is Turing Machine. And then our last game here, this is Marvel Legendary, a Marvel deck building game. This is Midnight Suns. These are all of like the creepy characters, so vampires and werewolves and Elsa Bloodstone, the witch hunter. So this is Werewolf by Night as well as on here. It revisits some of the old set mechanisms from the New Mutants set for the X-Men, and this one includes the Sunlight and Moonlight as well as a lot of demonic creatures. So I love this mechanism, Sunlight and Moonlight. What it does is it checks the market where you can buy stuff, and if there are more odd cost cards, it is Moonlight, and if they're more even cost cards, it is Sunlight, and your cards will change their effects based on what they are. And I love this, particularly Werewolf by Night. He has cool effects on both sides for Sunlight and Moonlight, but you can shift them based on what you're buying and when you're buying. So it encourages you to buy cards in later periods of the game, which I love. It means you're always getting something going on, but it also adds some interesting combos with when you want to make the switch between Sunlight and Moonlight, whether or not you're buying certain cards to keep you into certain of the daytimes. I think this is so much fun, and it's going to give you reasons to buy cards later. And then there's also new Bloodlust mechanic, Blood Frenzy. This particular Morbius has it, and it's going to just give you more attack power, the more different victory point values that you've been taking as you play. So it gives you reasons to hunt for specific villains and allows you to scale up the more time you play. I think, unfortunately, Morbius was one of the weaker characters in the set, but I had a lot of fun with Elsa Bloodstone in particular as well, and the new Blade is amazing, but the standout is definitely Werewolf by Night. I love that he engages with both Sunlight and Moonlight and has that versatility in him as well. So that is the legendary game here, that is Midnight Suns. So those were all of our board games that came in, expansions, but let's talk about all of the upgrades. Starting off with Frostpunk, the board game. This is the Timber City expansion. It's just a set of meeples that you can use in place of your miniatures. So we have the miniature wash version. So this one came in. I got this as part of a trade, so not something that I was going to buy, but figured, hey, if I'm going to get it as part of a trade, might as well. So that way we do actually have the complete Frostpunk board game now. So this was the only like small expansion cosmetic that we were missing. And I don't know if I'll ever use this. It's pretty expensive, and I don't know if I'm ever going to use it because we do have those cool miniatures. And unfortunately, the pieces here don't actually have the effects of the buildings on them. I imagine that if you play this game a lot, you're going to understand and remember what all of these do, but to me, it is a bit of a waste of space, as it's going to be obstructing your view on what you can actually see on the board. You have to get the tiles in addition to this piece in order to give you that thematic nature, and this one, it seems just super hard to actually differentiate the buildings. As you can see, you've got like just take a look at these. Like, imagine you played a smelter. I don't know right off the bat which one of these is a smelter. To have to look at the different artworks, look at the tile, try to figure out which one, and then, of course, these are going to be in just a bag, so you're looking through the bag trying to find the one. I don't know if I ever use these. I do like the aesthetic of the washed miniatures as well, a bit more than I enjoy the meeple version, but it's done now. The entire Frostpunk collection is there, so if we ever do end up getting rid of it, I don't know if we ever will, because that game is incredible, but we have that one too. So that's the Timber City expansion for Frostpunk, the board game. Next up was something that I was looking to grab for a while. This is a new playmat from AllPlay. It used to be board game tables, and these are these gigantic playmats that fit on whatever surface you need, and this one, we got a 5 foot by 3 foot playmat that has stitched edging, this nice burgundy color that you can see in the background here, and I'm using it all the time now. It's awesome. I love the color. I like the quality of these just in general, and yeah, they're incredible playmats. So this is one of my strongest recommendations here for playmats. You can get any color that you like. The shipping is super cheap, so you can get these fast. And my favorite thing about this is it turns any table into a board game table, and that is huge. That can't be understated, because I can take this with me to somebody else's house, and now their table is a board game table. It doesn't have the edges, but I don't really like the edges and feel like I'm leaning into the game all the time. With this, you just roll it up. Every game works perfectly, and you can get multiple colors if you want to change based on the theme. Like we have a cool blue one as well as this burgundy one, and now we have four multiple tables, so when we're running multiple games at a time, we have separate mats for each game that we're running. Love this. Can't recommend this one enough. This is one of my favorite purchases, period. And I think it might be my favorite board game accessory out there. So that is the all-play playmat, particularly a 5 foot by 3 foot burgundy one. And then our last upgrade that we picked up were more burger tokens for Arkham Horror, the card game. Played this recently with 4 players and understood immediately, oh geez, we're going to need more of these tokens. We were running out of tokens when we were playing. We didn't have enough resources, didn't have enough horde, didn't have enough damage, didn't have enough clues, because the game of Arkham Horror scales based on the player count. So you might get a location that says, hey, this has 2 clues per player. When you get to 8 players, you need 8 clues. When you get to 4 players, you need 8 clues there. And so you're going to need more resources. So I picked up another set of these. I love burger tokens. They're my favorite for your component upgrades when it comes to it. You can look at them from a distance and see exactly what they mean. They keep the general theme and vibe and artwork of whatever game they're playing from, and they're double-sided in order to make it so that you're able to convert things from 1s to 3s, or in this case, they retain the doom as well as the clues on the backside of those. So it works perfectly. I love these for the chaos tokens, all the different expansions. Most of our games that can use burger tokens have them in there instead of the regular tokens. So those are the burger tokens for Arkham Horror, the card game. And now we'll move on to our last portion. These are all of our pre-orders. These are all the games that we will be getting into the library soon, hopefully. Some definitely not soon. But starting off with Ark Nova Marine Worlds. This is just the expansion for Ark Nova. Like this game a lot. This one includes new water-based creatures, and it adds a new mechanism called the wave or the ocean or something like that, where whenever you see a symbol that has that ocean or wave symbol, it's going to clear some cards from that center area, meaning that you're going to have a center row that's moving a lot more constantly, so your choices are going to be a lot more open, but it's also going to pressure you to take the snap action to try to grab those cards that are important to you when they come out. I like that this is going to open up a variety of strategies and decrease that luck curve based on whether or not you see cards that just work for your opening hand. So I like that there's going to be more options to actually interact with. Looking forward to trying out all of these new effects. They also have new upgrade paths and cards, just more variability. This seems like a winning expansion for Ark Nova. That's Ark Nova Marine Worlds. Next up is Leviathan Wilds. This is a Shadow of the Colossus style game. You have these huge bosses, and you're going to be jumping on to the bosses to fight them. The game is played on one of these books that you're going to be folding out after you pick your Leviathan. Thematic cooperative game. It sounds like a lot of fun, and just that concept of being on these giant creatures. What a cool concept. I think that sounds so much fun, and the fact that you're able to get into it so quickly makes it one that will probably get played quite a bit. So that is Leviathan Wilds. Next up is Skytear Horde. This is the expansion for it, Monoliths, which is just going to give us a lot more cards to pick from. That was my biggest weak point in the original, was there just wasn't enough cards for any customization or deck building. It felt like there were cards that were clearly better than others. You played those, and it just made it so I lost interest in playing the game. The game was a bit too easy, and some of the colors just didn't work well at all, so I didn't really want to play them because they just didn't clash, and then the overlap on the different deck building restrictions just weren't there. So not one that I wanted to ever really return to after playing it for that first couple of months. Now, that being said, this new version has a brand new updated box that's going to store everything. It's going to give you brand new decks of cards, new things that you're going to be creating, new different colored sleeves, so you can actually differentiate between your good cards and your bad cards. Skytear Horde Monolith is supposed to introduce new decks for all the different characters, more options when it comes to deck buildings, as well as more difficult Horde decks, more expansions, new cards, new rulebook. I'm looking forward to, in general, everything this have, including challenge expansions, upping up that difficulty a little bit. And look at this, we've even got more organization help when it comes to the dividers here. I'm just excited for this in general. I like the system a lot. I just wanted more options, and it looks like this is going to give that to me. So that is Skytear Horde Monolith. Next up is the new expansion for Lost Ruins of Arnak. This is the Missing Expedition. This adds new leaders, so things that I already enjoyed from the original expansion, plus a cooperative expansion. Awesome. Anything that changes a game into cooperative is something that I'm at least interested in, because it means I'm going to be able to play it with a whole new different group of people. For example, my wife does not like playing competitive games with just me, so this sounds like a way that we can play Lost Ruins of Arnak together, but I think it'll also make it so it's a new challenge in this system. Viticulture World was one of my favorite games from last year, and so I hope that this does something similar with the Lost Ruins of Arnak system, as well as introducing just cool new leaders that can be used in any of the game modes. That is the Lost Ruins of Arnak, The Missing Expedition. Next up, we have the Marvel Champions section of our pre-order. So you can take a look in the description below and jump to the timestamps if you don't want to hear about Marvel Champions. But first up, we have Next Evolution. This is our next big campaign box that brings us the X-Force characters, starting off with Cable and Domino, as well as a whole set of villains that are going to give you new, unique scenarios. Looking forward to this one. So much fun. Domino looks so cool with her milling cards on the top of her deck strategy, but Cable also focuses on one of the new types of cards. They're the player side schemes, and so these cards are going to be things that you put in your deck, and then when you play them, they're going to have threat that you need to remove to gain some sort of bonus. So loving that concept and idea, and I think that it opens up the potential for the Justice aspect to do a bit more with their thwart removal. So looking forward to that, and the Cable character leans into that hard, getting more passive bonuses and abilities for putting out these side schemes out on the board. Our next Marvel Champions content here is Angel. This is the hero pack here that offers another gigantic card. So Archangel and Angel are now another 3-sided hero, very similar to Ant-Man and Wasp. There's a whole reveal stream that I've done for all these, so if you want to go check that out for more in-depth card analysis, you can go take a look at that. But I love this concept, and one of my viewers here actually pointed out how interesting Archangel is, because it has an effect that when you play aerial cards, you get to deal extra damage based on the cost of the card. So you want to be playing these big cost aerial cards to gain additional bonus value from. I think Archangel is going to be a pretty flexible character and has a lot of options, as opposed to someone that's a little bit more straightforward like Ant-Man or Spectrum with their more linear form changing. Also comes with protection with some new allies and events that look super interesting and efficient, like Siren here. After Siren attacks, stun a minion, giving you some flexibility on when to ignore them. Our other hero pack that we went ahead and pre-ordered now is Psylocke, and this is the ally that comes with Angel as well, so they've got the tag team cards that work together well, and she focuses on psionic cards, which even comes with a new resource that's going to be multiple when you're playing psionic, so some buffs to our other psionic characters like Phoenix, and this is going to be great as you're going to have a lot more options when it comes to playing their color-specific cards and actually getting resource production for those. She seems kind of insane. You start off with all of these blades on the board, and they're going to give you some flexibility with resources or extra damage, and then also comes with the Justice aspect, which have some more interesting cards. So as mentioned before, I've done a deep dive on these on the channel, but I am looking forward to these two characters. I think Psylocke looks incredibly powerful, but I do think that Angel is the one I'm the most excited for when it comes to these two smaller hero packs. That is Psylocke as well as Angel, all the stuff here for Marvel Champions. Our next campaign is S.T.A.L.K.E.R, the board game. This is from Awaken Realms. This has you exploring in a post-apocalyptic world. My friend Anthony actually gave me a whole rundown on what S.T.A.L.K.E.R is. I like that they're these sort of mercenary for hires that are going and exploring these wastelands. It sounds super fun, and it sounds like there's a cool story behind it. I didn't want him to go too deep into all of the spoilers, so luckily I am a little bit unspoiled when it comes to everything that's going on here, but I do trust Awaken Realms with putting out excellent campaign games, and this is a smaller campaign game, only about 3 missions per campaign, which sounds like it's something digestible. You can get in, play, and I like this theme of this exploration in the wasteland. The only wasteland game that I have right now is 51st State in our library, and this looks like it's going to be a great exploration of that area, that system, and it's a theme that I enjoy a lot. So if you have any recommendations for other super cool wasteland exploration games like this, that's something that I am always interested in looking forward to trying. So that is S.T.A.L.K.E.R, the board game. It's got that whole Awaken Realms treatment though, and that's going to push it on the edge and get people excited to play it. So that is S.T.A.L.K.E.R, the board game. Next up, we have French Quarter. This is a roll and write game from the same group that has done several of some that I've enjoyed. Motor City, Fleet the Dice game, Three Sisters, but French Quarter changes it up by adding action cards to the game. And this is so exciting to me because they are changing up the formula. And the original, it was always doing some form of dice drafting, taking them from a central board, getting effects, but the action cards mean that you are potentially having something that can branch and change based on the dice, the action card pool that you're pulling from. Sounds like a blast. You also have these bonus expansions from the Kickstarter. I'm looking forward to this one drastically. I love these systems, and yeah, every single one has been one that I've enjoyed, and looking forward to that action card system and how that's going to change up the approach to the roll and write system. So that is French Quarter. Next up is Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice. This is the Apocalypse expansion. This one has you going outside of Italy and into a new world here where you are going to be trying to explore the jungles. Think very much like the what's it called for Arkham Horde, the card game? It's the one where you go and fight Yig. That's what it feels like, where you have all of this jungle that you get to explore, new missions that are set in pyramids with creatures. This sounds so much fun. I love this exploration system if you have this open world that you're exploring, and I've just wrapped up all of the content for the original Assassin's Creed, so I'm just itching for more. I love this concept of that map that you get to take the missions in any path, so it's not as linear, but you still have that core Assassin's Creed framework as you're going to be focused on stealth and deciding when you want to interact with people coming in and attacking you. I love the item system in this game, and the Apocalypse expansion looks like a lot of fun with new character types that you're going to have to worry about, new story, and those new maps that you're going to be able to explore. Looking forward to this one. I am excited. That is Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice Apocalypse. Next up, in our last game on here, we have the Ultimate Tenaries Adventures. So this has been bid as a organization system and storage solution for Tenaries Adventures. So we just got this one in the library. This will probably be covered next month when it comes to actually talking about the content, but the Tenaries all-in box is going to be able to store everything in one place in a logical way so you can actually get it out when you're playing any type of game. And that's something that I'm looking forward to. I wasn't super thrilled with the campaign play in the original game with the cooperative version. I thought it was just okay. It felt pretty slow, but I do like the competitive version where you're taking your team of heroes versus your opponents. The storage system that they have right now, though, has it so that everything is pretty much scattered. Nothing has a set place, so this new organization system sounds awesome. Having one box that's going to be able to store everything well, and letting you be able to actually access everything interdependent of the game mode that you're actually playing. So looking forward to that. Looks like we have new characters and new types of cards that are going to be added to this as well. And since we were able to back during that first day, we also get a giant dragon miniature. I feel like we have so many of these. Oh my gosh. It's cool though. They do look awesome. The painted versions in particular are stunning. So there's even a mode where you can play using the dragons as characters and have them fight with each other. So that's the Ultimate Tenaries Adventure. As you can see here, it's going to be an improved core box, and everything is going to fit inside of that initial box. Whew. So that is Tenaries Adventure, the Ultimate Edition. And that's it. That's our library update for July 1st, 2023. Let me know what you think about all of these games that we talked about here. Which games did you pre-order? Which games entered your personal libraries in these last 2 months? And which games are you the most excited to hear us talk more about, or for you to just play in your own private collection? Any games that we missed that came out that we need to give a check out? Any games that we need to pre-order to make sure that we get a tribe to? I'm thinking about a run right now that I forgot to mention. I forgot to mention that we pre-ordered the Metal Gear Solid board game, so I'll probably put that one on next month's. And then we just got in the mail, we got the Galactus pledge. It's right there, right in front of me. It's the Galactus character for Marvel Zombies just came in, so haven't talked about that. And I just finished organizing the box for Too Many Bones, so I gotta write that down too. So that all that Unbreakable content came in yesterday. So not enough time to get it on this video, so there's always more stuff to play. I'm thrilled though, I'm loving it. It's summertime, having so much fun playing these games. Happy to hear your thoughts about what we're talking about here. But thank you so much for watching and being here.